Monroe Hayes sold her eggs for $3,000. She woke up pregnant instead, not with her own child, with his, the billionaire who owned half of Seoul's underground, the man whose name made politicians sweat and rivals vanish. An Byung-jin. The fertility clinic had made a mistake, a catastrophic, irreversible mistake. They implanted his stolen embryo into the wrong woman. And when he found out, he didn't ask if she wanted to be a surrogate. He told her she already was. "You're carrying my heir," he said, scanning her with eyes that held no warmth. "That makes you mine." Monroe had survived poverty, racism, and every cruelty East Baltimore could throw at her. But nothing prepared her for this. A Korean Mafia king who spoke in absolutes, who saw her as an incubator, and who would burn the world down before letting her go. The clinic's mistake had just made her the center of a war she didn't understand. And he wasn't letting her leave alive. 2 weeks earlier, Monroe Hayes had made the worst decision of her life. She just didn't know it yet. The Seoul Fertility Institute gleamed like a luxury hotel, all white marble, soft lighting, and the kind of sterile elegance that made poverty feel like a personal failure. Monroe sat in the waiting room with her hands folded in her lap, trying not to look as desperate as she felt. $3,000. That's what they'd promised for egg donation. Enough to cover 2 months of her grandmother's medication. Enough to keep the hospice bills at bay a little longer. She'd found the ad on a forum at 2 a.m, delirious from exhaustion after her 3rd shift that week. International donors welcome. Higher compensation than U.S. clinics. Discreet, professional, fast payment. Monroe had never been impulsive, but desperation rewrote the rules. Monroe Hayes? A nurse appeared, young, professional, holding a clipboard like armor. Monroe stood, smoothing down her thrift store dress, aware of how out of place she looked. A plus-size Black woman in a sea of delicate Korean donors who seemed to belong here in ways she never would. She followed the nurse down a hallway that smelled like antiseptic and money. "You've reviewed all the paperwork?" the nurse asked. "Yes." "Signed the consent forms?" "Yes." "Any questions before the procedure?" Monroe hesitated. "How long until I get paid?" The nurse's expression softened slightly. "Same day, once you've recovered from the retrieval." Monroe nodded. The nurse stopped outside a procedure room. "The doctor will be in shortly. Try to relax." Relax. As if that were possible when you were selling pieces of yourself to keep your grandmother alive. Monroe woke up groggy, mouth dry, body heavy. The recovery room was quiet, dim. A monitor beeped softly beside her. She blinked at the ceiling, trying to remember how long she'd been under. The door opened. A different nurse entered. Older, with kind eyes that didn't quite mask her professional efficiency. "How are you feeling?" she asked in accented English. "Tired. Sore." "That's normal. The doctor will check on you in a few minutes, then you'll be cleared to go." "And the payment?" "Already processed. $5,000. Monroe's head snapped up. "5? I thought it was 3. The nurse smiled. "The clinic appreciates international donors. Consider it a bonus." $5,000. Monroe's eyes burned. That was 4 months. 4 months of medication. 4 months of keeping her grandmother comfortable. "Thank you," Monroe whispered. "Rest now. We'll have you out of here soon." Monroe flew back to Baltimore that same night. First class. The clinic had upgraded her ticket without explanation. She didn't question it. She was too busy calculating how to stretch $5,000 across the mountain of medical bills waiting for her at home. Her grandmother was asleep when Monroe finally stumbled through the door of their tiny apartment at 3 a.m. The old woman looked small in her hospital bed, hooked up to machines that beeped and hissed like mechanical dragons. Monroe pressed a kiss to her grandmother's forehead. "I got the money, Gram," she whispered. "We're okay. We're going to be okay." It was a lie, but it was a necessary one. The first week back was normal. Monroe worked her shifts at the warehouse, picked up extra hours at the diner, came home exhausted and fell into bed beside her grandmother's hospital setup. Normal, until it wasn't. The first time Monroe noticed the car, she thought nothing of it. A black sedan parked across the street from her building. Tinted windows, engine off. Lots of people parked on her street. The second time she saw it, 3 days later, same spot, she felt the first flicker of unease. The third time, she started paying attention. Same car, different locations, always within sight of wherever she was. Monroe told herself she was being paranoid. She'd watched too many true crime documentaries. She was stressed, exhausted, but the feeling didn't go away. It got worse. She started noticing the same man in different places. Tall, Asian, always on his phone, always watching. Her skin crawled every time she saw him. She thought about calling the police, but what would she say? "Someone's looking at me? A car is parked legally on a public street?" She had no proof, no evidence, just a gut feeling that something was very, very wrong. The nausea started on day 10. Monroe woke up at 5 in the morning and barely made it to the bathroom before vomiting. She chalked it up to bad diner food. But it happened again the next morning. And the next. By day 12, she couldn't keep anything down. Her grandmother noticed. "Baby, you need to see a doctor," the old woman said, her voice weak but firm. "I'm fine, Gram, just a stomach bug." Monroe. That tone, the one that meant "don't argue with me." Monroe went to the free clinic on day 13. The nurse took her vitals, asked routine questions, and then paused. "When was your last period?" Monroe had to think. 5 weeks, maybe 6. I'm not always regular when I'm stressed. "Any chance you could be pregnant?" Monroe laughed. Actually laughed. "No, I haven't been with anyone in months." Sexual activity isn't always recent. Sometimes, I'm telling you, I'm not pregnant. The nurse smiled politely. "Let's just run a test to be sure." Monroe agreed because it was easier than arguing. She sat in the waiting room for 20 minutes, scrolling through her phone, ignoring the black sedan she'd seen parked outside the clinic. When the nurse called her back, her expression was different. Careful. "Miss Hayes, your test came back positive." The world tilted. "That's not possible." "The blood test is very accurate. You're pregnant, approximately 3 weeks along." Monroe's hands started shaking. "There has to be a mistake. I can't be." "Have you experienced any symptoms? Nausea, fatigue, breast tenderness?" "Yes, but it's stress, it's pregnancy." Monroe stood up so fast the chair scraped against the floor. "Run it again." "Miss Hayes, run it again." The nurse's expression softened with pity. "I understand this is shocking, but the results are clear. You're pregnant." Monroe's vision blurred. 3 weeks. 3 weeks ago, she'd been in Seoul, at the fertility clinic. Her stomach dropped. "Oh my God. Are you all right? Do you need to sit down?" Monroe grabbed her purse with shaking hands. "I need to go." "We should discuss your options. Schedule a follow-up." "I need to go." She ran. Monroe didn't sleep that night. She sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the wall, trying to make sense of the impossible. Pregnant. 3 weeks, the clinic. They'd said it was egg retrieval. They'd sedated her. She'd signed papers. What had they done to her? Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Monroe's heart stopped. She almost didn't answer. but something made her press the green button. Silence on the other end. Then breathing. "Hello?" Monroe whispered. The line went dead. Monroe threw the phone across the room. They came for her at 2 in the morning. Monroe woke to the sound of her front door being kicked in. She shot upright in bed, heart hammering as heavy footsteps thundered through her apartment. Her grandmother screamed, "Graham." Monroe ran toward the living room and froze. 6 men in black suits, faces expressionless, moving with military precision. One of them grabbed Monroe before she could react. His grip was iron. "Don't fight," he said in accented English. "You'll only make this harder. Let me go, Graham." Her grandmother was sitting up in bed, eyes wide with terror, trying to reach for the phone. One of the men gently took it from her hands. "Your granddaughter is not in danger," he said calmly, "but she needs to come with us." "Like hell I do." Monroe thrashed against the man holding her. "Let me go or I swear I'll—" Something pricked her neck. The world went soft, then dark. Monroe woke up in a car. Not just any car. A fortress on wheels, bulletproof glass, leather seats that probably cost more than her annual rent. And sitting across from her, watching her with eyes like black ice, was a man who made every instinct in her body scream run. An Beom-jin. She knew it was him before he spoke, before he moved. She could feel the danger radiating off him like heat. "You're awake," he said. His voice was quiet, controlled, more terrifying than any shout. Monroe's head was still foggy from whatever they'd injected her with, but adrenaline was burning through the haze fast. "Who the hell are you? Where's my grandmother? If you hurt her, your grandmother is fine. She's being looked after." "Looked after? You broke into our home. You kidnapped me." "I retrieved my property." The words were so calm, so absolute. Monroe stared at him. "Your property?" "You're carrying my child," Beom-jin said, and his eyes moved to her stomach with something that looked almost like possession. "That makes you mine." Monroe's blood turned to ice. "I don't know what you're talking about." "The Seoul Fertility Institute, 2 weeks ago. You sold your eggs." "Yes, I sold my eggs. They didn't extract." Beom-jin leaned forward slightly, and Monroe pressed herself back against the seat. "They implanted an embryo that belonged to me. You've been pregnant for 3 weeks." The world stopped. That's not possible. They said it was a donation. I signed papers for—" "You signed consent forms for reproductive procedures. Broadly worded, legally binding. The clinic made an error. Or someone made it look like an error." Monroe's hands went to her stomach. "You're lying. I have the medical records if you'd like to see them." "Then take it out. Fix this. I didn't agree to—" "No." The single word was a wall. Monroe's breathing turned shallow. "You can't force me to—" "I can. I am. And you will comply." "This is insane. This is illegal. I'll go to the police. Beom-jin pulled out his phone, turned the screen toward her. It showed a live feed of her grandmother, alone in their apartment. Monroe's heart stopped. "Your grandmother is 82 years old," Beom-jin said quietly. "Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. Approximately 3 months to live without aggressive treatment. Treatment you can't afford. Don't you dare." "I'm not threatening her." His eyes met Monroe's. "I'm offering you a choice." "That's not a choice, that's—" "You carry my child to term. You live under my protection for 9 months. You deliver safely. And in exchange, I pay for your grandmother's treatment. All of it. The best doctors, the best facility. Whatever she needs for however long she has left. Monroe's throat closed. You can't. I already have. My people are with her now, making sure she's comfortable, making sure she understands that you're safe. Tears burned Monroe's eyes. You son of a. Additionally, Byung-jin continued as if she hadn't spoken, when this is over, you'll receive $500,000, enough to start over, anywhere you want, doing anything you want. 500,000. Monroe couldn't breathe. And if I refuse? Byung-jin's expression didn't change. Then I remove my protection from your grandmother. The bills continue. The pain continues, and you both suffer. You're a monster. I'm a businessman. You're a... Choose, Monroe. She stared at him. At this man who'd ripped her life apart with the same ease most people ordered coffee. I need time to think. You have 72 hours. I want to see my grandmother. After you decide. I want it in writing. All of it. The medical coverage, the money, proof that you'll leave us alone after this is over. For the first time, something that might have been respect flickered in Byung-jin's eyes. Done. And I want updates. About her health. Every day. Acceptable. Monroe's hands curled into fists. I hate you. You don't have to like me. You just have to obey me. The car stopped. They were back at her apartment. Byung-jin nodded to one of his men, who opened Monroe's door. 72 hours, Byung-jin said. After that, the offer expires, and your grandmother's care stops. Monroe climbed out on shaking legs, the car pulled away, and Monroe stood on the sidewalk watching it disappear, knowing she'd just been given an impossible choice. Her freedom, or her grandmother's life. Monroe didn't sleep for 3 days. She researched on Byung-jin. What she found made her blood run cold. CEO of On Industries. Net worth estimated at $15 billion. Connections to half the politicians in South Korea. Rumored ties to organized crime that no one could prove but everyone whispered about. A man who made people disappear. A man who owned everything he touched. And now he wanted to own her. Monroe thought about running. But where would she go? How would she pay for her grandmother's care? How would she survive knowing she'd condemned the only family she had left to a painful death? On the 3rd day, Monroe called the number Byung-jin had left. A man answered immediately. Miss Hayes, I accept. Mr. An will be pleased. I have more conditions. A pause. Go on. I want my grandmother moved to a private facility, the best in Baltimore. I want her to think I'm overseas for work. I want video calls with her twice a week. And I want proof. Medical reports, billing statements, everything. Sent to me monthly. Anything else? When this is over, I never want to see him again. Understood. A car will pick you up tomorrow at 6 a.m. The line went dead. Monroe sat in the silence of her apartment and felt the weight of her decision settle over her like a burial shroud. She'd just sold 9 months of her life. To a man who saw her as nothing more than an incubator. A means to an end. A problem to be managed and then discarded. She pressed her hand to her stomach. I'm sorry. She whispered to the impossible life growing inside her. I'm so sorry. The flight to Seoul was first class. Monroe sat alone, staring out the window, watching America disappear beneath the clouds. Her grandmother thought she'd gotten a contract job overseas. Good pay. Temporary. An opportunity too good to pass up. The old woman had smiled through her tears and told Monroe to be safe. Monroe had lied to her face, and the guilt was eating her alive. When the plane landed, a driver was waiting. He didn't speak, just loaded her single suitcase into the trunk and drove. The compound appeared like something out of a nightmare. High walls topped with cameras, armed guards at every entrance. The main house rising from the center like a monument to wealth and paranoia. Monroe's stomach twisted. This wasn't protection. This was a prison. The car stopped. The door opened. And standing at the entrance, waiting for her like he'd known exactly when she'd arrive, was An Byung-jin. He looked the same as he had in Baltimore. Perfectly tailored suit. Cold, beautiful face. Eyes that held no warmth. "Welcome back, Monroe," he said. It wasn't a greeting. It was a claim. Monroe stepped out of the car, met his gaze. "Let's get one thing straight," she said, voice steady despite the fear clawing at her throat. "I'm here for my grandmother. Not for you. Not for this baby. When my 9 months are up, I'm gone. And you'll never see me again." Byung-jin tilted his head slightly. "We'll see." Then he turned and walked inside. And Monroe realized with cold, creeping certainty that she'd just made a deal with the devil, and he had no intention of letting her go. Monroe's room was a cage dressed as luxury, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking a garden she wasn't allowed to walk through alone, a bed large enough to sleep 4 people, furniture that looked like it belonged in a design magazine, a bathroom with heated floors and a shower system more complex than her grandmother's medical equipment. Everything was cold, perfect, untouchable, just like the man who owned it. An older woman appeared in the doorway, stern-faced, silver hair pulled back in a tight bun, wearing a black uniform that screamed authority. "I am Mrs. Lim," she said in careful English. "I manage this household. You will follow my instructions regarding meals, schedules, and movement within the compound." Monroe set her suitcase down. "And if I don't?" Mrs. Lim's expression didn't change. "Then you will learn why others do." Not a threat, a fact. "Mr. An has arranged for a doctor to examine you tomorrow morning. You will eat 3 meals daily. You will not leave the East Wing without escort. You will attend all medical appointments. You will—" "I get it," Monroe cut in. "I'm a prisoner with good meals." "You are protected." "From what?" Mrs. Lim's eyes flickered with something that might have been pity. "From yourself. And from those who would harm what you carry." She placed a folder on the dresser. "Your grandmother's medical reports, updated this morning. She's comfortable, stable. The new facility is excellent." Monroe's throat tightened. She wanted to hate this woman for being part of her captivity, but the efficiency, the care in those reports, it was more than Monroe had been able to give her grandmother in years. "Thank you," Monroe whispered. Mrs. Lim nodded once. "Dinner is at 7. Someone will come for you." Then she was gone. Monroe opened the folder with shaking hands. The medical reports were thorough, detailed. Her grandmother was receiving treatments Monroe couldn't even pronounce. Medications that cost more per dose than Monroe made in a month. She was comfortable, pain-free, cared for. And Monroe had sold her freedom to make it happen. She closed the folder and pressed her palms against her eyes. Don't cry. Don't break. Not yet. Dinner was served in a dining room that could seat 30 people. Monroe sat alone at one end of a table long enough to land a plane on. A younger woman brought out course after course, delicate, beautiful food that Monroe barely tasted. Her stomach was in knots. The nausea that had plagued her for days was worse now, amplified by stress and fear. She forced herself to eat anyway, for the baby, for her grandmother, for the deal she'd made. Footsteps echoed in the hallway. Monroe looked up. Byung-jin entered, still wearing his suit from earlier. He moved like a predator, economical, controlled, aware of everything in his environment. He sat down. Not at the head of the table, but 3 seats away from her. Close enough to watch, far enough to maintain distance. "How's your room?" he asked. Monroe set down her chopsticks. "Expensive." "Is it comfortable?" "Does it matter?" "Yes." She met his eyes. "Why? You planning to keep me longer than 9 months?" "No." "Then why does my comfort matter?" Byung-jin leaned back in his chair. "Because stress affects pregnancy outcomes. I need you healthy, calm, cooperative. I'm not a broodmare. You're carrying my child. The distinction is irrelevant." Monroe's hands curled into fists under the table. "You really are a piece of work." "I'm practical." "You're cruel." "I'm honest." Byung-jin's eyes didn't leave hers. "I don't pretend this is anything other than what it is. A transaction. You provide a service, I compensate you. When it's done, we both get what we want." "And what do you want?" "An heir." "Why this one? Why not just start over with someone who actually agreed to this?" Something dark flickered across Byung-jin's face. "That's not your concern." "It is when I'm the one pregnant." "No, it's not." He stood. The conversation was over. "Your first medical appointment is at 9 tomorrow morning. Don't be late." He left without another word. Monroe sat alone in the vast, cold dining room and wondered how she was going to survive 9 months of this. The doctor arrived at exactly 9 a.m. Dr. Park was a small, efficient woman in her 50s who moved through the examination with professional detachment. She took blood samples, performed an ultrasound, asked questions in perfect English. Monroe lay on the exam table, staring at the ceiling, trying not to think about the fact that there was something growing inside her that she'd never chosen. "Everything looks normal," Dr. Park said, studying the ultrasound screen. "Heartbeat is strong. Development is on track for 3.5 weeks." Monroe didn't look at the screen. Couldn't. "Any cramping? Bleeding?" "No." "Nausea?" "Constantly." "That's normal. I'll prescribe something to help." Dr. Park made notes on her tablet. "You'll need to take prenatal vitamins daily. Avoid alcohol, caffeine, certain foods. Mrs. Lim has the full list." "Great." Dr. Park paused, looked at Monroe with something that might have been sympathy. "I know this situation is unusual, but I'm here to make sure you and the baby stay healthy. If you have any concerns, any questions, you can call me directly." Monroe finally met her eyes. "Can you get me out of here?" "No." At least she was honest. "Then I don't have any questions." Dr. Park packed up her equipment in silence. At the door, she hesitated. "For what it's worth, Miss Hayes, Mr. Ahn takes very good care of his investments." "I'm not an investment. I'm a person. In this house, the distinction doesn't exist." She left. Monroe sat up slowly, pressing a hand to her stomach. 3.5 weeks. A heartbeat. Something real. Something she hadn't asked for but couldn't undo. She squeezed her eyes shut. This was going to be harder than she thought. Monroe spent the next 3 days learning the rules of her cage. She could move freely within the East Wing. Her bedroom, a sitting room, a private library, a small gym. She could not leave the wing without Mrs. Lim or an assigned guard. She could not access the West Wing, the security center, Byung-jin's private office. She could not leave the compound under any circumstances. She was fed 3 meals daily, monitored constantly, treated with the kind of cold efficiency reserved for livestock. And she saw Byung-jin exactly twice. Once in passing, in the hallway. He'd looked at her, nodded once, and kept walking. The second time was worse. Monroe had been in the library, a beautiful room full of books she couldn't read because most were in Korean, when he'd entered without knocking. "You need anything?" he'd asked. Freedom. Besides that, my own life back. Not an option. Monroe had slammed the book she'd been pretending to read. Why do you even care if I need anything? You've made it clear I'm just an incubator. An incubator I need functional. God, you're romantic. Byung-jin had almost smiled. Almost. I'll have Mrs. Lim bring you English books. Then he'd left. And Monroe had sat there, hating how that small gesture, books, had made something in her chest loosen just slightly. She couldn't afford to see him as human. Couldn't afford to find anything redeemable in a man who'd kidnapped her and held her grandmother hostage. But the books appeared the next day. Dozens of them. And Monroe hated herself for being grateful. On the fourth night, Monroe met the others. She'd been walking back from the library when voices drifted from an open doorway. English, American accents. Monroe stopped. Telling you she's not going to last. She looks ready to bolt. She can't bolt. She's locked in tighter than Fort Knox. Doesn't mean she won't try. Laughter. Monroe stepped closer to the doorway. Two women sat in what looked like a common room. One was Asian, maybe mid-20s, beautiful in a sharp, calculated way. The other was white, blonde, older, with the kind of cosmetic perfection that screamed money. They both looked up when Monroe appeared. Well, well, the blonde woman said, smiling in a way that didn't reach her eyes. The mystery woman finally surfaces. Monroe stayed in the doorway. Who are you? Jessica Hart. I've been here 8 months. She gestured to the other woman. This is Minji. She's on month 6. Monroe's stomach dropped. You're pregnant? Surrogate, Jessica corrected. Same as you, same deal, same prison. Minji studied Monroe with cold assessment. You're the accident. It wasn't a question. What? The clinic screw up. Everyone knows. Mr. On's been tearing the city apart trying to figure out who sabotaged the procedure. Monroe stepped into the room. There are others? How many? 3 of us now, Jessica said. There were 4, but Claire delivered last month. Got her money and disappeared. So this is, what, a baby factory? It's a business, Minji said flatly. We signed contracts. We knew what we were getting into. I didn't. Jessica's smile sharpened. No, you're special. You're carrying the golden child, the one he actually cares about. Monroe's pulse kicked up. What do you mean? The rest of us? Jessica gestured between herself and Minji. We're carrying babies for clients. Rich people who pay On Industries obscene amounts of money for surrogacy services. We're commodities. But you're carrying his baby. His heir. I didn't ask for this. None of us did, Minji said. But here we are. Monroe sank into a chair. How do you survive this? Jessica laughed. We don't fight it. We play the game. We follow the rules. We deliver healthy babies. And we walk away rich enough to never think about this place again. And if you break the rules? The room went cold. Don't, Minji said quietly. Just don't. Monroe looked between them. What happens? They make an example, Jessica whispered. There was a girl last year. Tried to run. They found her 3 days later. And? She delivered the baby, but she didn't get paid. And she didn't leave unscathed. Monroe's hands trembled. What did they do to her? We don't know, but we heard her screaming. Silence. Heavy. Suffocating. So we follow the rules, Jessica continued, her voice brittle. We smile, we cooperate, we don't ask questions, and we count down the days until we're free. Monroe stood on shaking legs. This is insane. This is survival, Minji corrected. Monroe left without another word. She made it back to her room before the panic attack hit. Monroe didn't leave her room for 2 days. She told Mrs. Lim she wasn't feeling well, which wasn't a lie. The nausea was constant now, and the fear was eating her alive from the inside. She'd known this was bad. She hadn't known it was this bad. A knock on her door. Monroe didn't answer. The door opened anyway. Byung-jin stood in the doorway. "You missed your appointment with Dr. Park." Monroe didn't turn around. She sat by the window, staring out at the garden, arms wrapped around herself. "I'm fine." "You're not." "How would you know?" "Because I know everything that happens in this house." Monroe finally looked at him. "Do you know your other surrogates are terrified of you?" Something flickered in his eyes. "Yes." "Does that bother you?" "No." "Of course it doesn't." Monroe turned back to the window. "You don't care about anything except getting what you want." Byung-jin stepped into the room. "What happened?" "Nothing." "Monroe?" "I met Jessica and Minji. They told me about Claire, about the girl who tried to run." Silence. "Then, that girl tried to terminate the pregnancy. That's why she was punished." Monroe's blood ran cold. "So if you won't?" "You don't know that." "I do." Byung-jin moved closer. "Because you made a deal, and you'll honor it. Because your grandmother's life depends on it." Monroe's hands curled into fists. "I hate you." "You've said that before." "I mean it more every day." "Good. Hate keeps you sharp. Keeps you from making stupid mistakes." He turned to leave. Stopped. The girl who ran didn't just try to escape. She tried to sell the baby, to my enemies, for money. So yes, she was punished. Because she betrayed the contract. Betrayed the child. Betrayed everything. Monroe looked up at him. "Are you telling me this to scare me?" "I'm telling you this so you understand the rules. Follow them and you'll be treated well. Break them. And consequences follow. It's simple. It's cruel. It's fair." He left, and Monroe sat in the silence, realizing she was trapped in something far more dangerous than she'd imagined. This wasn't just about a baby. This was about power, control, and the man who would destroy anyone who threatened either. Monroe started leaving her room again. She had no choice. Dr. Park came twice a week. The examinations were thorough, clinical, invasive. Monroe endured them because she had to. Because resistance meant punishment. Because her grandmother's life hung in the balance. She saw Jessica and Minji occasionally in passing. They didn't speak much, just exchanged looks that said we're all in hell together. And she saw Byung-jin more often now, not by choice. He seemed to appear whenever she was in a common area, in the library, in the hallway, in the dining room, always watching, always assessing, never speaking unless necessary. It should have terrified her. Instead, it made her angry. "Do you have nothing better to do than stalk me?" Monroe asked one evening when she found him standing in the library doorway. "I'm not stalking you. You're always wherever I am. This is my house. It's a prison. It's the safest place in Seoul." Monroe slammed her book shut. "Safe from what?" "You keep saying I'm in danger, but I don't see anyone trying to hurt me except you." Byung-jin stepped into the room. "You don't see them because I make sure you don't." "Who?" "My enemies. The people who put you in this situation. The ones who want to use you and the child as leverage against me." "Then tell me who they are." "No." "Why not?" "Because you don't need to know. You need to stay safe. Let me handle the rest." Monroe stood, moving closer to him, close enough to see the faint scar on his jaw, close enough to see that his eyes weren't completely cold. There was something underneath, something he kept buried. "I'm not a child," Monroe said quietly. "I'm not an idiot. If someone's trying to kill me, I deserve to know who. You deserve nothing beyond what our contract stipulates. Our contract is a joke. You forced me into this. I gave you a choice. That wasn't a choice, that was extortion." Byung-jin's jaw tightened. "Call it whatever you want. The result is the same. You're here, you're staying here, and you'll do exactly as you're told." "Or what?" He leaned in, close enough that Monroe could smell his cologne, feel the heat radiating off him. "Or you'll find out why everyone else in this house obeys me without question." Monroe's heart hammered, but she didn't back down. "You don't scare me." "I should." "Why? Because you're rich? Because you're powerful? Because everyone else bows and scrapes and treats you like a king?" Monroe's voice dropped. "I've survived worse than you, An Byung-jin. I've been poor. I've been dismissed. I've been treated like I'm worth nothing my entire life. You think your threats matter? You think your money impresses me?" Something shifted in his eyes. "Then what would impress you?" The question caught her off guard. "What?" "If money and power don't matter to you, what does?" Monroe swallowed hard. Honesty. Respect. Being treated like a person instead of a problem to manage. Byung-jin stared at her for a long moment. Then he stepped back. "You want honesty? Fine. You're here because someone tried to destroy me by creating a pregnancy I couldn't control. You're here because that child is the only thing left of someone I failed to protect. And you're here because if I let you go, you'll be dead within 72 hours. He moved toward the door, paused. "Is that honest enough for you?" Then he was gone. And Monroe stood in the empty library, heart racing, mind spinning. He'd said more in 30 seconds than he had in 2 weeks, and every word had felt like a crack in the armor he wore so carefully. She pressed a hand to her stomach. "What have I gotten us into?" she whispered. That night, Monroe's phone buzzed. The secure one Byung-jin had given her. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. "Hello?" Breathing on the other end. Then, "You shouldn't trust him." Monroe's blood turned to ice. "Who is this?" "Someone who knows what An Byung-jin really is. What he's capable of. He's not protecting you, Monroe. He's using you." "How do you know my name?" "I know everything. I know about the clinic. I know about your grandmother. I know you think you made a deal that will save her." "Who are you?" "A friend." "Bullshit." The voice on the other end laughed softly. "Smart girl. Okay. Not a friend, but not an enemy either. Just someone who wants you to know the truth before it's too late." "What truth?" "The woman whose eggs created that baby? The one Byung-jin claims to have loved? He's the reason she's dead." Monroe's stomach dropped. "You're lying." "Am I?" "Ask him. Ask him what happened to Yoon Sera. Ask him why she died. Ask him who was responsible." The line went dead. Monroe sat frozen, phone trembling in her hand. Yoon Sera. The name meant nothing to her. But the way the caller had said it, with such certainty, such venom, made her blood run cold. She looked at the door. Byung-jin was somewhere in this house, and she needed answers, even if it meant walking straight into danger to get them. Monroe found Byung-jin in his office. She didn't knock, didn't wait for permission. She pushed through the door and found him standing behind a massive desk, phone pressed to his ear, speaking rapid Korean that sounded like controlled fury. He looked up when she entered. His eyes narrowed. He said something sharp into the phone and ended the call. "You're not supposed to be in this wing." "Who is Yoon Sarah?" The air in the room went dead. Byung-jin's expression didn't change, but something shifted behind his eyes. Something dangerous. "Where did you hear that name?" "Answer the question." "Get out." "No." Monroe stepped further into the room. "Someone called me. Told me that the woman whose eggs made this baby, Yoon Sarah, is dead because of you. Is that true?" Byung-jin moved around the desk with predatory grace. "Who called you?" "I don't know. They didn't say." "What number?" "Blocked." "Give me the phone." Monroe pulled it from her pocket but didn't hand it over. "Answer my question first." "You don't get to make demands." "I'm carrying your child. I think I've earned the right to know if the biological mother died because of you." Byung-jin's jaw tightened. "What else did they tell you?" "That you're using me, that you're not protecting me, that I shouldn't trust you." "Smart advice." Monroe blinked. "What?" "You shouldn't trust me." Byung-jin's voice was flat, cold. "You shouldn't trust anyone in this house, including me." "Then why am I here?" "Because the alternative is worse." He held out his hand. "The phone. Now." Monroe handed it over. Byung-jin pulled out his own phone, made a call. Spoke in Korean too fast for Monroe to catch even a single word. When he hung up, his expression was darker than she'd ever seen it. "Pack a bag," he said. "What?" "Pack. A. Bag. You're being moved." "Where?" "Somewhere safer." "I thought this was the safest place in Seoul." "It was, until someone got close enough to call you on a secure line that's supposed to be untraceable." Byung-jin moved to a cabinet, pulled out a handgun, checked the magazine with practiced efficiency. "Which means someone inside this compound gave them access." Monroe's blood ran cold. "You think there's a traitor?" "I don't think, I know." He grabbed her arm, not roughly, but firmly, and pulled her toward the door. "Wait, what about Jessica? Minji, the others?" "They're not the target. You are." "Why?" Byung-jin stopped, looked at her. "Because you're carrying my heir. The only heir that matters. The only one I actually give a damn about. And my enemies know it." Then he pulled her into the hallway. The next 30 minutes were chaos. Guards appeared from everywhere. Mrs. Lim materialized with a packed bag Monroe didn't remember owning. The compound transformed into a military operation. Doors locking, security protocols activating, people moving with lethal precision. Monroe was shoved into an armored SUV. Byung-jin climbed in beside her. 3 more vehicles formed a convoy around them. They drove fast. Too fast. Monroe gripped the door handle, heart hammering. "Where are we going?" "Safe house. Outside the city." "For how long?" "Until I find who's leaking information." "And then?" "Then I eliminate the problem." The way he said it, so casual, so final, made Monroe's stomach twist. She looked at him. Really looked at him. He wasn't just angry. He was terrified. It was subtle, hidden beneath layers of control and calculation. But it was there in the tension of his jaw, the whiteness of his knuckles, the way his eyes kept flicking to her stomach. "You're scared," Monroe said quietly. "I'm prepared." "That's not the same thing." Byung-jin's eyes cut to hers. "If something happens to you, to the baby, I lose everything." "So yes, Monroe, I'm scared. Does that make you feel better?" "No, it makes me more scared." His expression softened fractionally. "Good. Fear keeps you alert." The convoy turned down a side road. Then everything went to hell. The explosion came from the left. A deafening blast that rocked the SUV, shattering windows, throwing Monroe against her seatbelt hard enough to knock the air from her lungs. Byung-jin's body covered hers before she could process what was happening. "Stay down," he shouted. Gunfire erupted, sharp cracks against bulletproof glass, the screech of tires, shouting in Korean. Monroe couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Byung-jin barked orders into a radio, his body still shielding hers, one hand pressed protectively against her stomach. "We're moving," the driver yelled in English. "Hold on." The SUV lurched forward, engine roaring. More gunfire. A secondary vehicle in their convoy exploded. Monroe screamed. "Eyes on me," Byung-jin commanded, grabbing her face, forcing her to look at him. "Look at me. Breathe. We're getting out of this. They're trying to kill us. They're trying to kill me. You're collateral. Which means they won't risk a shot that could hit you." "How do you know?" "Because they need you alive. The baby is leverage. You're just the vessel." The words should have hurt. Instead, they were oddly comforting. It meant she was valuable. It meant they wouldn't kill her. Not yet. The SUV swerved violently. Then the gunfire stopped. Silence. Heavy. Oppressive. Monroe's ears rang. "Status," Byung-jin said into the radio. A voice crackled back. "2 vehicles down, 8 casualties. Attackers retreated. Direction? East, toward the industrial district." Byung-jin cursed in Korean. "Get us to the safe house. Now. No stops. No delays." He finally released Monroe, pulling back to assess her. "Are you hurt?" Monroe shook her head. She couldn't speak. Couldn't process. Byung-jin's hands moved over her, checking for injuries, for blood, for anything broken. "The baby," Monroe whispered. "We'll check, as soon as we're secure." His eyes met hers, and for the first time, Monroe saw something almost human in them. Fear. Real, raw fear. "I won't let them hurt you," he said quietly. "I won't let them take what's mine." Monroe wanted to argue, wanted to tell him she wasn't his, but the words wouldn't come. Because in that moment, with bullets still echoing in her ears and death so close she could taste it, Byung-jin's possessiveness felt less like imprisonment and more like survival. The safe house was a fortress hidden in the mountains. Concrete walls, reinforced doors, no windows on the ground floor. Monroe was rushed inside by guards who looked like special forces operatives. Byung-jin never left her side. A doctor was already waiting. Not Dr. Park. Someone else. A man in his 60s who worked quickly and efficiently. "I need to examine you," he said in accented English. "Make sure everything is intact." Monroe lay on a medical table in what looked like a converted basement. The examination was thorough, invasive, humiliating, but necessary. Byung-jin stood against the wall, arms crossed, watching every movement. "Heartbeat is strong," the doctor finally said. "No signs of trauma, no bleeding. The pregnancy is stable." Monroe's eyes burned with relief. "She needs rest." The doctor continued. "No stress, minimal movement for the next 48 hours. Byung-jin nodded. "Done." The doctor left. Monroe sat up slowly, pulling the medical gown tighter around herself. "Thank you," she whispered. Byung-jin looked at her. "For what?" "For protecting me. For covering me when the explosion happened. I was protecting my investment. You were protecting me." He didn't argue, didn't confirm, just looked at her with those unreadable eyes. "Get some rest," he finally said. "We'll be here for a while." "How long?" "Until I find who ordered that attack." "And then?" His expression went cold. then I make them regret ever hearing my name. Monroe didn't sleep. She lay in a small bedroom on the second floor, staring at the ceiling, listening to guards move through the house like ghosts. Her hand rested on her stomach. The baby was okay. She was okay. But for how long? Someone wanted her dead. Or wanted the baby. Or wanted to hurt Byung-jin through her. She was a pawn in a game she didn't understand. And the only person keeping her alive was a man who saw her as property. A knock on the door. "Come in," Monroe called. Byung-jin entered carrying a tray of food. He set it on the bedside table. "You need to eat." Monroe sat up. "I'm not hungry." "I don't care. Eat." She looked at the tray. Rice, soup, fruit, simple but carefully prepared. "Did you make this?" Mrs. Lim sent it. "Is she here?" "No, skeleton staff only. People I trust absolutely." Monroe picked up the spoon, started eating because arguing took energy she didn't have. Byung-jin sat in the chair by the window, watching her, always watching. "You want to ask me something?" Monroe said. "Several things." "So ask." "Why aren't you more afraid?" Monroe paused. "What?" "You were almost killed tonight. Your life is in danger. You're trapped in a safe house with a man you claim to hate. And you're eating soup like it's a normal Thursday." Monroe set down the spoon. "I grew up in East Baltimore, in neighborhoods where gunshots were background noise, where people disappeared and no one asked questions. I watched my mother die from an overdose when I was 12. I raised myself while taking care of my grandmother." She met his eyes. "I've been afraid my whole life, Byung-jin. Fear doesn't shock me anymore. It's just part of existing." Something flickered in his expression. Understanding, maybe. "That's why you don't break," he said quietly. "That's why I adapt." Silence. Then, "Yoon Sarah was my fiancé." Monroe's breath caught. Byung-jin stared out the window, his profile sharp against the fading light. "We were engaged for 2 years. She was brilliant, kind, everything I wasn't. She worked in biomedical research, fertility science. She wanted to help people who couldn't have children." His jaw tightened. "My enemies found out about her, used her research to get close to me, planted someone in her lab, someone she trusted." "What happened?" "They sabotaged her work, made it look like she'd falsified data, destroyed her reputation. She couldn't handle the scandal, the shame, the betrayal." Byung-jin's voice went hollow. "She killed herself 3 years ago, before I could fix it, before I could protect her." Monroe's chest ached. "I'm sorry." "Don't be, it was my fault. I brought that world into her life. I made her a target." He finally looked at Monroe. "Before she died, we'd created embryos. For the future. For when we were ready. She knew her research was dangerous, knew there was a chance something would happen to her. So we preserved them. Just in case. And someone stole one." "Yes. Why?" "To hurt me. To create chaos. To force me into a situation I couldn't control." His eyes held hers. "You were supposed to be leverage, a stranger carrying my child, someone they could manipulate or eliminate as needed. But you found me first." Barely. Monroe's hand went to her stomach. "So this baby is all I have left of her, the only piece of the future we planned that still exists." The weight of that confession settled over the room like a shroud. Monroe understood now. Why he was so possessive. Why he'd go to war to protect this pregnancy. Why he saw her as nothing more than a vessel. Because she was carrying someone else's dream. Someone else's love. And Monroe was just the accident that made it possible. "I can't be her," Monroe said quietly. Byung-jin's eyes snapped to hers. I don't expect you to be. Then what do you expect? I expect you to survive, to deliver this child safely, to walk away when it's over. And that's it? That's all I am to you? What else would you be? Monroe didn't have an answer. Shouldn't have wanted one. But something in her chest twisted at the emptiness in his voice. I should let you rest, Byung-jin said, standing. Wait. He paused. The person who called me. The one who told me about Yoon Sarah. Do you know who it was? Not yet, but I will. And when you do? His expression went cold. They'll disappear. Permanently. He left, and Monroe sat alone in the silence, wondering why that threat didn't scare her as much as it should. 3 days passed in the safe house. Monroe was restless, confined, going stir-crazy in the small bedroom. She ventured downstairs despite Byung-jin's orders to rest. She found him in what looked like a command center, multiple screens showing security feeds, maps, data she didn't understand. He was on the phone, speaking in rapid Korean, his expression darker than she'd ever seen it. When he noticed her, he ended the call. You should be resting. I've been resting for 3 days. I'm going insane. Better insane than dead. Monroe crossed her arms. Any progress? Some. Care to elaborate? No. Of course not. She moved closer to the screens. What is all this? Security feeds from the compound, traffic cameras from the attack route, financial records of everyone in my employ. You think someone inside betrayed you? I know someone did. I'm just determining who. Monroe studied the screens. Can I help? Byung-jin looked at her like she'd grown a second head. Help? I used to do data analysis for a marketing firm before I had to take 3 jobs to keep my grandmother alive. She gestured to the screens. I'm good at finding patterns, anomalies, things that don't fit. This isn't marketing data. No, but patterns are patterns. Byung-jin stared at her for a long moment. Then he pulled out a chair. Sit. Monroe spent the next 6 hours analyzing financial records, looking for unusual transactions, payments that didn't make sense, transfers to accounts that raised red flags. Byung-jin worked beside her, occasionally explaining what certain codes meant, what normal looked like in his world. It was strange, working alongside him, not as captor and captive, but as something else. There, Monroe said, pointing to a screen. This account. It's received 5 payments over the last 3 months, all from different shell companies, but the amounts are sequential, like a pattern. Byung-jin leaned in, studying the data. His shoulder brushed hers. Monroe tried not to notice how warm he was, how he smelled like expensive soap and something darker underneath. You're right, he said quietly. That's not normal. He made a call, spoke in Korean, hung up. The account belongs to one of my senior security officers, Kwon Jae-sung. Monroe's stomach dropped. Your lawyer? The one who came to the clinic? Yes. You think he's the traitor? I think he's compromised, whether willingly or through coercion. Byung-jin's expression was murderous. Either way, he's dead. You can't just kill him without proof. I don't need proof. I need certainty. And patterns don't lie. He stood, started toward the door. Monroe grabbed his arm. Wait. If you kill him now, you won't know who he's working for. Who ordered the attack? Who's really behind this? Byung-jin looked down at her hand on his arm, then at her face. You're suggesting I interrogate him. I'm suggesting you be smart instead of emotional. His eyes darkened. I'm never emotional. You are about this. About Yoon Sarah. About the baby. About anyone who threatens what's yours. and that's a weakness. No, it's human. Byung-jin pulled his arm free, but he didn't leave. If I bring him in for questioning and he's innocent, I've created an enemy inside my own organization. And if he's guilty and you kill him too fast, you'll never know who else is involved. Byung-jin's jaw worked. You're annoyingly logical. You're annoyingly homicidal. Something that might have been amusement flickered in his eyes. Fine, we do this your way. But if he makes one wrong move, you can kill him slowly, I know. Byung-jin made another call. Arrangements were made. Jae-sung would be brought to the safe house. And Monroe realized she'd just inserted herself into something far more dangerous than pregnancy. She'd just become part of Byung-jin's war. Jae-sung arrived 6 hours later. He looked calm, professional, like a man who had nothing to hide. Until he saw Monroe. Something flickered in his expression. Surprise, then fear. Byung-jin noticed it too. Sit, he commanded. Jae-sung sat in a chair in the center of the command room. 3 guards stood behind him. Byung-jin circled him like a predator. You've been with me for 8 years, Byung-jin said quietly. Handled my legal affairs, my contracts, my most sensitive negotiations. Yes, sir. And in those 8 years, have I ever given you reason to doubt my judgment? No, sir. Then why did you betray me? Jae-sung's expression didn't change. I don't know what you're talking about. Byung-jin nodded to one of the guards. A tablet was placed in front of Jae-sung, showing the financial records Monroe had found. These payments, Byung-jin said. Explain them. Jae-sung looked at the screen. His face went pale. I don't know where those came from. Liar. Sir, I swear. Byung-jin moved so fast Monroe barely saw it. One moment he was across the room. The next, his hand was around Jae-sung's throat. Tell me who paid you. Tell me who ordered the attack. Tell me everything, and I'll make your death quick. Jae-sung gasped for air. I wouldn't. Who? I don't know. The payments came through automated systems. I never saw who. Byung-jin released him. Jae-sung collapsed forward, coughing. You expect me to believe you were paid without knowing by whom? It's the truth, I swear on my life. Your life is already forfeit. Monroe stepped forward. Let me talk to him. Byung-jin turned. What? Let me talk to him. Alone. Absolutely not. You're terrifying him. He can't think, can't answer. Give me 5 minutes. Byung-jin looked at her like she'd lost her mind. Then he looked at Jae-sung, at the genuine terror in the man's eyes. 5 minutes, he said. Then I'm coming back, and if you don't have answers, I'm killing him in front of you. He left. The guards followed. Monroe pulled up a chair, sat across from Jae-sung. Tell me the truth, she said quietly. Not because you're afraid of him, but because I'm carrying his child, and I need to know who's trying to kill me. Jae-sung looked at her, really looked at her. You shouldn't be here, he whispered. You should run, as far and as fast as you can. Why? Because he's not protecting you. He's using you, just like he uses everyone. Who paid you? Jae-sung's hands trembled. I don't know her name, but she's powerful, connected. She said she wanted to help me, that An Byung-jin was dangerous, that working for him would get me killed. So you betrayed him. I tried to leave, tried to quit. But you don't quit the An family. You don't walk away. So she offered me a way out. Money, protection, a new life. In exchange for what? Information about his operations, his vulnerabilities, his... He stopped, looked at Monroe's stomach. His heir, Monroe finished. Jae-sung nodded. She wanted to know when the pregnancy would happen, where you'd be kept. How to get to you? Why? I don't know. She didn't say, but she was willing to pay millions for that information. And you gave it to her? I gave her what I could. Locations, security protocols. But I didn't know about the attack. I swear, I didn't know they'd try to kill you. Monroe believed him. He was too terrified to lie. This woman, what did she look like? I never saw her face. We only communicated through encrypted messages. But she had access to shell companies, financial systems, that level of power. Yes. So she's inside Byung-jin's world. Someone close enough to know his operations, but distant enough to stay hidden. Jae-sung nodded. The door opened. Byung-jin entered. His eyes went to Monroe. Well? He's telling the truth. He was manipulated, used, but he doesn't know who by. Then he's useless. Byung-jin pulled out a gun. Wait. Monroe stood. He can help us. He has the communication records, the encryption keys. We can trace her. Or I can kill him and remove the leak. And lose your only connection to whoever's orchestrating this. Byung-jin's finger rested on the trigger. Monroe stepped between him and Jae-sung. Don't. Move, Monroe. No. I won't ask again. Then shoot me, because I'm not moving. Silence. Heavy, dangerous. Byung-jin's eyes burned into hers. Then, slowly, he lowered the gun. You have 24 hours, he said to Jae-sung. Give me everything you have on her. Every message, every transaction, every detail. And maybe I'll let you live. Jae-sung nodded frantically. Byung-jin grabbed Monroe's arm and pulled her from the room. He didn't speak until they were alone in the hallway. Then he shoved her against the wall. Not violently, but firmly. Don't ever do that again. Do what? Put yourself between me and a target. He's not a target, he's a victim. He betrayed me. He was scared, desperate, manipulated, just like me. Byung-jin's eyes searched hers. You're nothing like him. Why? Because I'm carrying your child? Because you're stronger than he'll ever be. The words hit her like a physical blow. Monroe stared at him. At this man who saw her as property but spoke to her like she mattered. I don't understand you. Monroe whispered. Good. You're not supposed to. You're cruel, controlling. You've taken everything from me. Yes. But you also saved my life, protected me, and just now you listened to me instead of killing someone. Don't mistake pragmatism for humanity. Is that what it was? Pragmatism? Byung-jin's hand came up to her face. His thumb brushed her cheek. The touch was so unexpected, so gentle that Monroe stopped breathing. You confuse me, Monroe Hayes, he said quietly. You shouldn't matter. You should be nothing more than a means to an end. But every time I look at you, I see someone who refuses to break. Someone who fights back. Someone who... He stopped, dropped his hand, stepped back. Get some rest. We have work to do tomorrow. Then he walked away. And Monroe stood in the hallway, heart racing, skin still tingling where he'd touched her. This was dangerous, this feeling growing between them. This thing that wasn't hate but wasn't affection either. Something darker, more complicated, and far more terrifying than any attack. Jae-sung delivered the files at dawn. Encrypted messages, financial transactions, communication logs dating back 6 months. Monroe sat beside Byung-jin in the command center, both of them exhausted, running on caffeine and adrenaline as they combed through the data. There, Monroe said, pointing to a message thread. She references the original container. That's weird phrasing. Byung-jin leaned in. Original container for what? For the embryo, maybe? But why call it that unless... Monroe's eyes widened. Unless there was supposed to be a different surrogate. Someone she chose. Jin was already typing, pulling up records from the fertility clinic. His face went pale. What? Monroe asked. There were 2 procedures scheduled that day. Yours and someone else's. He pulled up the file. Monroe's stomach dropped. The other patient was listed as Jessica Hart. Jessica? Monroe whispered. One of your surrogates? Jin's jaw clenched. She was supposed to carry a client's baby, standard contract. But if the embryos were switched, then she was supposed to get your baby, and I was supposed to get the client's. Which means Jessica knows. Monroe's blood ran cold. She's been in the compound this whole time, watching me, reporting back. Jin was already on his phone, barking orders in Korean. He hung up and grabbed his gun. Stay here. Where are you going? To get answers. I'm coming with you. Monroe? That's not a request. He looked at her. Something fierce and protective flashed in his eyes. Stay behind me. Don't speak. Don't interfere. Fine. They moved. The convoy back to the compound took 40 minutes. Monroe's heart hammered the entire drive. Jessica. It made horrible sense. She'd been too friendly, too eager to share information, too quick to warn Monroe about the dangers of running, because she wanted Monroe scared, compliant, easy to control. The compound was on lockdown when they arrived. Guards everywhere, weapons drawn. Jin moved through the chaos like a storm, and Monroe struggled to keep up. They found Jessica in the common room. She looked up when they entered, and for a split second, her mask slipped. Fear. Then it was gone, replaced by that same calculated smile. Mr. An. Monroe, what's going on? Jin didn't waste time. How long have you been working for her? I don't know what you're talking about. Yoon Sera's sister. How long? The room went dead silent. Monroe's mind reeled. Sister? Jin's voice was ice. Yoon Minseo, the woman who blames me for her sister's death. The woman who's been hunting me for 3 years. How much did she pay you to betray me? Jessica's smile turned sharp. Not enough, apparently, since I'm still stuck in this prison carrying someone else's brat. You were supposed to carry mine. I was supposed to be free. Minseo promised me that if I helped her, if I made sure the embryo ended up in the right place at the right time, she'd pay me $10 million and get me out of this contract. So you sabotaged the clinic. I convinced a nurse to switch the procedures. You were supposed to get a stranger you couldn't control. Someone vulnerable. Someone who'd break under pressure. Jessica's eyes cut to Monroe. But you didn't break, did you? You just had to be strong. Had to survive. Had to make him actually care about you. Monroe's breath caught. Jin's expression didn't change, but his hand tightened on his gun. Where is Minseo? Somewhere you'll never find her. Somewhere she can watch you lose everything, just like she did. She didn't lose everything because of me. She lost her sister because Sarah made a choice. Sarah killed herself because you brought danger into her life. Jessica's voice rose, cracking. Because your enemies targeted her. Because being with you destroyed her. And Minseo thinks killing me will bring her back? Minseo thinks making you suffer is justice. Jin raised his gun. Wait. Monroe stepped forward. If you kill her, you won't find Minseo. You won't end this. I don't need her to find Minseo. I just need her to stop breathing. Please. The gunshot was deafening. Monroe screamed. Jessica collapsed, blood blooming across her chest. She gasped, choking, eyes wide with shock. Jin walked over, crouched beside her. Tell Minseo I'm coming for her. And when I find her, I'll make sure she joins her sister. Jessica's lips moved. She whispered something Monroe couldn't hear. Then she went still. Byung-jin stood, turned to his guards. Clean this up. Find Minji. I want to know if she's compromised too. Monroe couldn't move, couldn't breathe. She just watched someone die. Byung-jin grabbed her arm, pulled her from the room. You didn't have to kill her, Monroe whispered. Yes, I did. She could have. She was a traitor, a threat. And I don't leave threats alive. He pushed Monroe into his office, slammed the door. She turned on him. You're a monster. I'm a survivor. You just murdered someone in cold blood. I eliminated a problem. There's a difference. Monroe's hands shook. How do you live with yourself? By making sure the people I care about stay alive. You don't care about anyone. I care about you. The words hung in the air like a bomb. Monroe stared at him. What? Byung-jin's jaw worked. I didn't want to. Didn't plan to. But somewhere between you threatening me in a library and you stepping between me and a bullet, I started caring whether you lived or died. That's not... You can't just... I know. He moved closer. I know it's wrong. I know you hate me. I know the situation is impossible, but I can't watch you walk into danger without wanting to destroy everything that threatens you. Monroe's breath came in short gasps. You don't get to do this. You don't get to kidnap me, control me, treat me like property, and then claim you care. I'm not claiming anything. I'm stating a fact. Well, I don't want your care. I don't want your protection. I just want to survive this nightmare and get back to my life. You can't. Why not? Because the moment you leave this compound, you're dead. Minseo won't stop until she's destroyed everything connected to me. And that includes you. Monroe's eyes burned. Then what am I supposed to do? Stay here forever? Be your prisoner for the rest of my life? You're supposed to let me keep you safe until I end this. And how long will that take? As long as it takes. Monroe laughed bitterly. You're insane. Probably. She turned away, pressing her hands to her face. This was too much. All of it. The violence, the danger, the impossible feelings growing between them. I need air, she whispered. You can't leave. I need AIR, Byung-jin. He stared at her for a long moment. Then he opened the door. The garden. 15 minutes. I'll have guards posted. Monroe walked out without another word. The garden was the only beautiful thing in the compound. Carefully maintained. Peaceful. A slice of normalcy in a world gone mad. Monroe sat on a stone bench, head in her hands, trying to process everything. Jessica was dead. Yoon Sarah's sister was orchestrating everything. And Byung-jin, the man who'd kidnapped her, controlled her, terrified her, had just confessed to caring about her. She didn't know what to do with that. Didn't know if she believed it. Didn't know if it mattered. Footsteps approached. Monroe looked up, expecting a guard. Instead, she found Minji. The other surrogate looked different. Harder, her eyes cold. You should have left when you had the chance, Minji said quietly. Monroe stood. What? Jessica wasn't the only one working for Minseo. Ice flooded Monroe's veins. You... Minji pulled a knife from her sleeve. I'm sorry, I really am. But $10 million is $10 million. She lunged. Monroe dove sideways, hitting the ground hard. Pain shot through her side, but she rolled, scrambling to her feet. Help! She screamed. Minji came at her again, fast, practiced. Monroe grabbed a garden tool, a small spade, and swung. It connected with Minji's arm. The knife clattered to the ground, but Minji was stronger. She tackled Monroe, slamming her into the stone path. Monroe's head cracked against the ground. Stars exploded in her vision. I don't want to hurt the baby, Minji hissed. But Minseo only needs it alive. You're expendable. She raised a rock. Monroe's hand found the fallen knife. She didn't think. Just moved. The blade sank into Minji's side. Minji's eyes went wide. She collapsed. Monroe shoved her off, gasping, scrambling backward. Blood. So much blood. On Minji, on Monroe's hands, on the ground. Guards rushed in, guns drawn. Byung-jin appeared, and his face went white when he saw her. Monroe. She tried to kill me, Monroe whispered. She was working for Minseo. Her vision blurred. Something warm trickled down her temple. Byung-jin caught her before she hit the ground. Get the doctor, he roared. Now. Monroe's eyes fluttered. The baby. We'll be fine. You're going to be fine. You promised? I know. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Everything went dark. Monroe woke up in a hospital bed. Not the compound. A real hospital. Byung-jin sat in a chair beside her, head in his hands. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. You're awake, he said, voice rough. Monroe's hand went to her stomach. The baby? Fine, stable. You have a concussion and some bruising, but the pregnancy is intact. Relief crashed over her, then anger. You said I'd be safe. I know. You promised. I know. I could have died. The baby could have... I know. Byung-jin's voice cracked. He stood, moved to the window, shoulders tight with tension. I failed you. Again. Just like I failed Sarah. Monroe sat up slowly. This isn't the same. Isn't it? I brought you into my world. Made you a target. Almost got you killed. I'm still alive. Barely. Monroe stared at his back. At the rigid line of his spine. At the way his hands clenched into fists. Byung-jin. He didn't turn. Look at me. Slowly, he faced her. His eyes were red. Had he been crying? I'm alive, Monroe said firmly. The baby's alive. We survived. You shouldn't have had to. But I did, and I'm still here. She held out her hand. Byung-jin stared at it like it might burn him. Then, slowly, he crossed the room, took her hand. His grip was gentle. Careful. Like she was made of glass. I'm ending this, he said quietly. Today. I'm done playing defense. What are you going to do? Whatever it takes to make sure Minseo never threatens you again. Don't do anything stupid. Too late for that. I kidnapped you, remember? Monroe's lips twitched despite everything. Fair point. Byung-jin's thumb brushed over her knuckles. When this is over, when you're safe, you can leave. I'll honor the contract, give you the money, let you go back to your grandmother. And the baby? Will be cared for, loved, protected. By you? Yes. Monroe's throat tightened. You're really going to raise this child alone? I've been alone for 3 years. I'm used to it. That's the saddest thing I've ever heard. Byung-jin's expression flickered. I don't need your pity. It's not pity, it's... She stopped. Didn't know how to finish that sentence. Didn't know what this feeling was. Byung-jin squeezed her hand once. Then let go. Rest. I'll be back soon. Where are you going? To end a war. Monroe didn't see Byung-jin for 3 days. She was kept in the hospital under guard. Dr. Park checked on her constantly. Her grandmother video called. And Monroe lied through her teeth about being fine, about the work trip going well. But she couldn't stop thinking about Byung-jin, about where he was, what he was doing, if he was alive. On the 4th day, Mrs. Lim appeared. You're being discharged, she said. Mr. On wants you back at the compound. Is he there? No. Where is he? Finishing things. That's all she would say. Monroe was taken back to the compound in an armored convoy. The place felt different now. Emptier, colder, like something vital had been ripped out. Monroe was escorted to her room, and there on her bed was an envelope. Her hands shook as she opened it. Inside was a letter, handwritten, in English. Monroe, by the time you read this, Mincio will be dead. I've spent 3 years hunting the people responsible for Sarah's death. Today I'm ending it. I need you to know something. The clinic wasn't just sabotaged. The embryo you're carrying, it wasn't Sarah's. Monroe's blood turned to ice. I lied. Sarah and I never created embryos together. She died before we could. But I told everyone we had because I needed leverage. I needed my enemies to think I had something precious to protect. Something they could target. The embryo inside you is created using my genetic material and an anonymous donor's eggs. You were never carrying Sarah's child. You were carrying mine. Just mine. I'm sorry. For everything. For the lies. For the danger. For making you part of this nightmare. The contract still stands. When you deliver, you'll get the money. Your grandmother will be cared for. And you'll never have to see me again. But I need you to understand. I didn't plan to care about you. Didn't want to. But somewhere in the chaos, you became more than a surrogate. More than a vessel. You became the only thing I wanted to protect more than revenge. If I don't come back from this, tell my child that their father tried to be better. That he failed. But that he tried. B. Monroe's hands shook so hard the letter fell. The baby wasn't Sarah's. There was no dead fiancé's legacy. Just Beom Jin. And a lie designed to protect something that didn't exist. She pressed her hands to her stomach. This baby was his. Fully his. And he'd sent her away to keep her safe while he walked into whatever hell he'd planned. The door burst open. A guard rushed in, face pale. Miss Hayes, you need to come with me. Now. What's happening? Mr. On, you need to come, please. Monroe ran. They took her to the medical wing. It was chaos. Doctors, guards. Blood on the floor, and on a surgical table in the center of it all. Beom Jin. He was unconscious, covered in blood, chest barely rising. What happened? Monroe gasped. He went after Mincio, one of the guards said. Alone. Found her in an abandoned warehouse. She had 12 men with her. And? He killed all of them, including her. But he took 3 bullets in the process. Monroe's knees buckled. Dr. Park appeared, scrubs covered in blood. We've stabilized him, but he's lost a lot of blood. The next 24 hours are critical. Can I see him? You shouldn't. Can I see him? Dr. Park hesitated, then nodded. Monroe moved to the table. Beom Jin looked small, vulnerable. Nothing like the terrifying man who'd kidnapped her. She took his hand. It was cold. You idiot, she whispered. You stupid, reckless idiot. His fingers twitched. His eyes cracked open. Monroe, don't talk. Save your energy. The baby is fine. We're both fine. Relief flooded his face. Good. That's good. Why did you lie? Monroe asked, tears streaming down her face. Why tell me the baby was Sarah's? Because, he coughed, grimacing. Because I needed you to think it was important, sacred, worth protecting. You're an idiot. I know. This baby is yours. That makes it important. Not to you. Yes to me. Beom Jin's eyes widened. What? Monroe squeezed his hand. I don't know when it happened. I don't know how. But somewhere between hating you and fearing you and fighting you, I started caring whether you lived or died. Monroe, so you don't get to die. You don't get to walk into a warehouse alone and get yourself killed. Because this baby needs a father, and I. She stopped. Couldn't say it. Couldn't admit what she was feeling. But Byung-jin saw it anyway. Stay, he whispered. What? When this is over, when the baby's born, don't leave. Byung-jin. I know I don't deserve it. I know I've done terrible things. But if there's any chance, any possibility that you could forgive me, that we could. Could what? Be something other than captor and captive. Monroe's heart hammered. This was insane. Impossible. She should run. Should take the money and disappear. But looking at him now, broken, vulnerable, asking instead of demanding, she realized something terrifying. She didn't want to leave. Didn't want to walk away from this angry, damaged man who'd somehow become the only person who made her feel alive. Ask me again, Monroe whispered. When you're not dying, when this is really over, ask me then. And you'll consider it? Maybe. Byung-jin's lips curved into the smallest smile. I can work with maybe. His eyes closed. The monitors beeped steadily. And Monroe sat beside him, hand in his, watching him breathe. Wondering how her life had become this. Wondering if she'd just made the best or worst decision of her life. Wondering if love could grow in the ruins of trauma. 3 months later, Monroe stood in the garden, hand on her growing stomach. 6 months pregnant now. The baby moved constantly, kicked, made her presence known. Her. They'd found out 2 weeks ago. A girl. Byung-jin had cried when Dr. Park told them. Actually cried. Monroe had pretended not to notice. You're thinking too hard. She turned. Byung-jin approached, moving carefully. He'd recovered from the gunshot wounds, but he still favored his left side. I'm thinking about how insane this all is, Monroe said. Having second thoughts? Every day. But you're still here. I'm still here. He stood beside her, close but not touching. They'd been doing this dance for 3 months, getting closer, learning each other, building something fragile and new from the wreckage of how they'd started. Monroe had video called her grandmother 2 days ago and told her the truth. Not all of it, but enough. That she was pregnant, that she was staying in Seoul, that she'd met someone complicated. Her grandmother had looked at her through the screen with knowing eyes. Baby, are you happy? Monroe had thought about it. Really thought. I'm getting there, she'd said. And it was true. I've been thinking, Byung-jin said quietly. Dangerous. About us. About the contract. Monroe's stomach tightened. What about it? I want to avoid it. Her breath caught. What? The contract. The money. The terms. I want to throw it all out. Why? Byung-jin turned to face her. Because I don't want you here because of a contract. I don't want you staying because you're being paid. I want. He stopped. Started again. I want you to choose this. Choose me. Choose us. Not because you have to. Because you want to. Monroe's eyes burned. And if I don't? Then I'll honor the original terms. Give you the money. Let you go. Raise our daughter alone. Our daughter. Yes. The word hung between them. Acknowledgement. Truth. Not his daughter. Not the baby. Ours. You're asking me to give up $500,000, Monroe said. I'm asking you to take a chance on something worth more. Which is? A family, a future, a life that's messy and complicated and probably doomed, but ours. Monroe looked at him, at this man who'd kidnapped her, terrified her, protected her, changed her. You know what the craziest part is? She whispered. What? I think I'm falling for you. Byung-jin's expression cracked. Monroe, I know it's insane. I know it's Stockholm Syndrome or trauma bonding or whatever a therapist would call it. But when you almost died, I realized I didn't want a world without you in it. You're sure? No, but I'm here anyway. He closed the distance between them. His hand came up to her face, gentle, careful. I don't deserve you. Probably not. I'll spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy anyway. That's all I'm asking. He kissed her, soft. Careful, like she was something precious. And Monroe kissed him back. Because love didn't always make sense. Sometimes it grew in the darkest places. Sometimes it bloomed in the ruins of trauma and terror. Sometimes the monster became human, and sometimes the prisoner chose to stay. 6 months later, Monroe held her daughter for the first time at 3 a.m. Byung-jin sat beside her hospital bed, eyes red, looking at their child like she was a miracle. She's perfect, he whispered. She is. What should we name her? Monroe had thought about this for months. Hope, she said quietly. Because that's what she is. Proof that something beautiful can come from something broken. Byung-jin's eyes met hers. Hope on Hayes. You want to hyphenate? I want her to know she comes from both of us. That she's not just mine. She's ours. Monroe's throat tightened. Okay, Hope on Hayes it is. They sat in silence, watching their daughter sleep. My grandmother wants to meet her, Monroe said. When? Next week, if you're okay with that. Of course. She's family. Family. A word Monroe had thought she'd lost. A word Byung-jin had never really had. And now they were building one. Messy. Complicated. Born from chaos and violence and impossible circumstances. But theirs. Monroe? Yeah? Thank you. For what? For staying. For choosing this. For giving me a chance I didn't deserve. Monroe looked at him. At the man who'd been her captor. Her protector. Her nightmare. Her salvation. We saved each other, she said quietly. That's what families do. Byung-jin leaned over and kissed her forehead. I love you. It was the first time he'd said it. Monroe's eyes filled with tears. I love you too. You terrifying, impossible man. He laughed. And in that hospital room, with their daughter sleeping between them, Monroe realized something. She'd sold her eggs for $3,000. She'd woken up pregnant with a stranger's child. She'd been kidnapped, threatened, and trapped in a war she didn't understand. But somehow, impossibly, she'd found a home. Not a place. A person. And that made all of it. All the terror, all the pain, all the chaos. Worth it. Epilogue. 1 year later, Monroe stood in the garden, watching Byung-jin chase their daughter through the flowers. Hope was walking now. Barely. Toddling more than running. But Byung-jin followed her like she was the most fascinating thing in the world. Mrs. Lim appeared beside Monroe, holding a tray of tea. He's different now, the older woman said quietly. How so? Before you, he was ice. Now he's... She paused. Human. Monroe smiled. He's still ice sometimes. But now he melts. For you. For her. It was true. Byung-jin was still dangerous. Still powerful. Still ruthless when necessary. But he came home every night. Held his daughter. Kissed Monroe like she was the only thing keeping him tethered to Earth. They'd gotten married 3 months ago. Small ceremony. Just family. Monroe's grandmother had flown in, healthy now, thriving on the medications Byung-jin paid for without blinking. She'd looked at him with knowing eyes and said, You take care of my girl. You hear me? And Byung-jin had promised. Monroe's phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Her heart stopped. Then she opened it, Congratulations on your family. You earned it. J. Sung. Still alive, still out there somewhere. Byung-jin had let him live after all, had given him money and a new identity and sent him somewhere safe, because Monroe had asked him to, because he'd learned mercy. Monroe deleted the message. Byung-jin approached, carrying Hope, both of them covered in grass stains. "What are you smiling about?" he asked. "Nothing. Everything. Us." "Good answer." He kissed her. Hope giggled and reached for Monroe's face. And Monroe realized something. She'd come to Seoul to sell her eggs for $3,000. She'd left with a family worth infinitely more. Sometimes the worst decisions led to the best destinations. Sometimes nightmares turned into dreams. And sometimes the deadliest man in Seoul became the best thing that ever happened to you. Even if it started with a catastrophic mistake.